didn't send everyone out. And what it was that...
Give me an egg.
in New Mexico, what was happening is that Santa Fe was becoming like the center. There was actually a few Europeans and a lot of mestizos. When you look at it, just look at the numbers. When Coronado came to New Mexico, he only brought 350 Europeans with him. Most of them were soldiers. But they brought 1,800 quote-unquote servants. And those were basically Mexican Indians. In Santa Fe, if you go right across from the oldest church, San Miguel, there's a little plaque on the wall there, and it says that the oldest church was built by the Tlaxcalan Indians. The Tlaxcalan were the ones who united with Cortez to defeat the Aztecs. In fact, they put out thousands of warriors to defeat the Aztecs. 100 years later, they ended up as servants here in Santa Fe. So they didn't live in the Villa of Santa Fe, they lived outside of the Villa of Santa Fe, in the barrio of Analco. And then as Christianity was getting into the pueblos, as some of the pueblos became Christianized, they'd be sent to Santa Fe. And of course they didn't want them in the Villa of Santa Fe, so they ended up in the barrio. And so the barrio of Analco grew bigger and bigger, and it was in fact way larger than Santa Fe. So the barrio Analco was very rowdy and very rebellious, and they had a couple of Indian revolts in the barrio of Analco. And so what the New Mexico government figured they would do is, well, two things. First of all, land grants are usually given to someone like Aron Rael, who did something great, and they'd give him a bunch of land. And then he could get servants to work the land. And so if you did something great, you get a land grant. But then what happened after that was to get rid of the rowdiness in Santa Fe and take down the rowdy population, they opened up what were known as community land grants. And they'd tell them, if you guys go and settle in Arroyo Hondo, if you go settle in Abiquiu, if you go settle in Cuesta, we'll give you land and you'll be free people to do with as you please and be as rowdy as you want. Now Cuesta is a little different because Cuesta, there wasn't any wealth. You know, it's really hard to grow crops, so it wasn't that they were sent here to really make money. In 1812, King Charles of Spain said that in New Mexico that they needed defensive settlements. And so Cuesta, well, let me back up a little bit on the history of Cuesta. Well, we all know where the Pueblito is up here. And the Kiowa Trail ran from Colorado along the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. It ran right in front of Lucy Gonzalez's house, right down here behind, somewhere along here, and it passed in front of the Pueblito, and then it would go up to Lama and into Taos. So what Taos would do, Taos was always had friends with the Apaches. So the Apaches de Acho were here, and they were the ones who, like I said, had fought the Europeans in Santa Fe. So what they, as traders would come down from the Kiowa Trail, the Indians from Colorado, they would always, you know, the Apaches here would kind of stop them and see what they had, and so they would get word to Taos. You know, we have traders coming in from Sioux traders coming in, and they have hides, or there's a war party. So Cuesta served as basically the gateway to the pueblo, to all the pueblos, to the Rio Grande pueblos. That was what the Pueblito was. It was the gateway to all the pueblos. In the 1700s, there was a big war between the Comanches and the Apaches, and most of the Apaches were wiped out, and we think that's right of what happened to the Apaches here. Of course, a lot of them got sucked into the Spanish New Mexico thing. That it was just like a melting pot. So in 1812, the king said that they can have defensive settlements. So the mayor, the alcalde of Taos, did the same thing that Taos Pueblo had done. They sent settlers here to serve as kind of a buffer for Taos. And that's there was, I think, 40 families who originally settled. Our link to that was the Gomez's family, because when the Raels came, they married into the Gomez family. 2 brothers married 2 Gomez sisters, and the rest is history. Yes?
So kind of related, going back to like our heritage in terms of the Sephardic Judaism as part of who we are. Grandpa, when I was little, Grandpa would always say that the name was Israel, and that somehow in history the first 2 letters got cut off. And recently I met someone who's like a theologian linguist, and so he said to me that in Hebrew, any word that has the El in it, like Rael, that El in Hebrew is the word for God. So like our name is sacred.
Very good, Roberta.
Yeah. In Tomé, they were actually baptizing their kids Israel. They're using the full name Israel. Questions?
Did you have the blanket? Oh, you were so trained.
Questions? Comments?
I know, like,